In this video we will explore a sonata from Beethoven's early period. Despite being a work from Beethoven's first period, it already contains characteristics and ideas that will become very prominent in his later work. Nevertheless, this sonata is still clearly rooted in the classical period, next to the works of Mozart and Haydn. The recording that we will be listening to is from Paavali Jumpanen. As usual, I will play the slideshow of the score with indicated harmony and structure. Pay close attention to form. We have an exposition with the first theme, a transition to the second theme and the codetta. This is all repeated and followed by a development section to conclude with the Re Exposition. The first theme starts on a block chord followed by a triplet motive. Look at the global rhythmic variety in these first 4 bars. We have a half note, then triplets, subsequently quarter notes, and a dotted rhythm near the end. The first phrase is repeated an octave higher, and now has a more elaborated accompaniment. The second phrase of the first theme then starts with a rising chromatic run, which Beethoven must have borrowed from Mozart's work. He also takes care of more rhythmic variety by placing chords on the weak beats in the bass. The second phrase is then repeated but an octave lower. The last chord is now changed to a secondary dominant of the dominant. This leads to the transition on a dominant pedal. The transition is entirely written in triplets. This is a motivic connection to the triplets of the first theme. Also, the transition is something more typical Beethoven, due to its very energetic and propelling feel. The second theme has an upbeat and it's quite similar to the first theme. The accompaniment is similar as well. The 3 quarter notes as an upbeat are used again in the second phrase. The repeated figure in green is a very effective and common pattern with Beethoven, Mozart and Schubert. In the next bar this motive is then reduced and ends on a half cadence. The second theme is then repeated, followed up by an extensive triplet codetta. Halfway this codetta, the triplet motif of the first theme pops up again. Now, take a look at the seemingly innocent dominant 7th chord. That's right, it has no leading tone in it. That's just good old Ludwig, taking some liberties in voice leading. The codetta ends on the tonic pedal in D major, which logically leads to the recap in G major. But we've already analyzed that part, so let's get into the development section. The short development section is mainly based on the first theme. It starts in D minor with the triplet notes and immediately modulates to A minor. Then a similar modulation is used to get back to the key of E minor. We then have a pedal point on B, preceded by an Italian augmented 6th chord. To get back to G major, Beethoven uses a succession of 7 chords combined with a pivot modulation. We are now in the final part of the sonata called the Re Exposition. In this Re Exposition most of the material is reused, but I will point out some deviations. Right before the transition, Beethoven modulates to C major with another pivot modulation. The next modulation is a bit trickier. There are 2 chromatic modulations. The first one is to A minor and the second one back to the home key of G major. The second theme is now reharmonized in G major, which is conformed to classical sonata structure. The remainder of the work more or less speaks for itself, so I will leave that up to you, and please feel free to ask any questions. Take care and see you soon for another music theory lesson.